People think attention is the same thing as connection. It's not. Attention is noise, numbers on a screen, views ticking upward, names scrolling past faster than you can read them. Connection is quieter. It's intentional. It's someone choosing to stop for a moment and actually engage. When you build things in public, you get used to attention. It's everywhere. Praise, criticism, memes, assumptions, all mixed together. But strangely enough, attention doesn't always make you feel seen. Sometimes it does the opposite. It creates distance. People project ideas onto you instead of listening to what you're actually saying. That's the part no one prepares you for. You can have millions watching and still feel like no one is really there. Because being watched isn't the same as being understood. Applause isn't the same as conversation. And admiration isn't the same as care. I've learned that real connection doesn't come from agreement or praise. It comes from participation. From someone saying, I heard you. Even if they disagree. Even if they challenge you. Especially then. That's when you know you're not just talking into the void. A comment isn't about validation, it's about presence. It's proof that someone didn't just scroll past, didn't just consume and move on. They stopped, they thought, they responded. In a world that moves this fast, that choice matters more than people realize. So when I say something like, if you love me, comment, it's not a demand, it's not ego, it's a simple human signal. A way of asking, are you actually here with me or just watching from a distance? Because real connection doesn't shout. It shows up. Silence is a strange thing. People assume silence means neutrality or indifference or maybe even peace. But when you're speaking openly, building ideas in real time, putting thoughts out into the world unfinished, silence can feel heavier than criticism ever does. Criticism at least tells you someone is listening. It means they care enough to react, to disagree, to engage. You can work with that. You can respond, clarify, improve. Silence gives you nothing. It leaves you guessing whether the message landed at all or just disappeared into the noise. When you're trying to do something meaningful, in public, silence can start to feel personal, even when it isn't meant to be. You wonder, did I explain it badly? Did I miss something obvious? Did I lose people along the way? Not because you need approval, but because progress depends on feedback. Engineering doesn't work without signals, neither does communication. What people don't always see is that silence can slowly erode momentum. Not all at once, but gradually. You start to question whether it's worth explaining things in detail, worth slowing down to bring people along, worth being open instead of guarded. And that's a dangerous place to end up because the moment builders stop talking, misunderstanding fills the gap. This isn't about needing everyone to agree. Disagreement is healthy. Debate sharpens ideas. Silence just blurs them. It leaves room for assumptions to grow unchecked, for narratives to form without context. So when I ask for engagement, it's not about volume. It's about signal. A simple response can say, I'm here. I'm listening. I'm part of this conversation. Because silence doesn't mean nothing was felt. It just means nothing was shared. There's a strange assumption that comes with visibility, that if enough people admire what you do, you must feel understood. But admiration and understanding lie very far apart. One is about distance. The other requires closeness. Being admired often means being simplified, turned into a symbol, a headline, a shortcut for ideas people already believe. But when that happens, the human part gets edited out. The doubts, the curiosity, the unfinished thoughts, all the things that actually drive creation get replaced with a version that's easier to consume. And that can feel isolating. Not because of a lack of attention, but because of too much projection. People talk about you instead of with you. They react to an image instead of a person. And over time, you start to realize that being idolized can be lonelier than being unknown. What most people want isn't applause. It's recognition. To be seen clearly, not perfectly. To be understood as someone still figuring things out, still learning, still adjusting course. That doesn't disappear just because you've built something big. Real connection happens when someone engages with the ideas, not the image. When they respond to the questions, not just the outcomes. When they're willing to meet you in the uncertainty instead of waiting for polished answers. That's why genuine interaction matters more than praise. It reminds you that you're not speaking into a vacuum. That someone on the other side is thinking alongside you, not just watching from afar. Because admiration can feel good for a moment. But being truly seen, that's what keeps you going. A comment seems small. Almost trivial, a few words typed quickly before moving on. But in a digital world built on speed and distraction, that small act carries more weight than we admit. It's a pause, a decision to engage instead of just consume. When someone comments, they're doing more than reacting. They're showing presence. They're saying, I didn't just watch this happen, I took part in it. That matters. Especially when ideas are complex, unfinished, or uncomfortable. Especially when the conversation isn't easy, most people scroll. Some people watch, very few people respond. And that difference changes everything. A response turns a broadcast into a dialogue, It turns a monologue into something shared. It reminds you that this isn't just content floating into the void. It's a connection forming in real time. That's why I don't see comments as approval or validation. I see them as signals, feedback loops, data points that tell you someone is thinking, questioning, engaging. And that kind of engagement is essential if you actually care about progress. You don't improve ideas in isolation. You improve them through friction, through conversation, through people pushing back or leaning in. A comment doesn't have to agree. It doesn't have to praise. It just has to be honest. Even disagreement is a form of respect. It means the idea was worth responding to. So when I invite people to comment, it's not about numbers or algorithms. It's about presence, about choosing to be part of something instead of standing on the sidelines, because real support isn't passive, it participates. Love gets misunderstood a lot. People think it means agreement, loyalty without questions, support without friction. But real love doesn't work like that. Real love shows up, it participates. It challenges when something doesn't sit right and stays engaged, even when things get uncomfortable. If you truly care about an idea, a person, a mission, you don't just nod quietly and move on. You ask questions, you push back, you add your perspective, you become part of the process instead of a spectator. That's how things improve. That's how blind spots get exposed. That's how progress actually happens. Some of the most valuable input I've ever received didn't come wrapped in praise. It came as disagreement, as skepticism, as someone saying, I don't think this works. Here's why. That kind of response takes effort, it takes thought, and it takes a level of care that passive support never reaches. Participation is risky. When you comment, you're putting your perspective out there. You're saying, this matters enough to me that I'm willing to be visible. That's not nothing. In a world where it's easier to stay silent and avoid engagement, participation is a form of commitment. And that's what love really looks like in public spaces. Not blind agreement, not unconditional applause, but active involvement. Staying in the conversation even when it's messy, unfinished, or uncertain. So when someone comments whether they agree, or disagree, that tells me more than any silent approval ever could. It tells me they're thinking alongside me, not just watching from a distance, because love doesn't mean never questioning. It means never disengaging. At the end of the day, this isn't about numbers on a screen or comments stacked under a video. It's about something much more human. It's about knowing you're not thinking alone. When you put your thoughts into words, when you leave a comment, you're creating a signal. You're saying, I'm here, I'm paying attention, I care enough to respond. We live in a time where silence is easy. You can watch, scroll, absorb, and disappear without ever leaving a trace. But nothing meaningful has ever been built that way. Every breakthrough, every movement, every leap forward started with people who chose to engage instead of observe. When you speak up, even in a small way, you're adding weight to the conversation. You're helping shape what comes next. You're reminding everyone on the other side of the screen that this isn't a monologue, it's a dialogue. And dialogue is where ideas sharpen, where truth gets tested, where momentum is created. I don't need perfection, I don't need constant praise. What matters is presence, thoughtful, honest reactions, curiosity, doubt, hope. All of it belongs here. Because when people interact, the signal gets stronger and the noise fades. So if something resonated with you, say it. If something challenged you, say that too. If you're unsure, curious, or even skeptical, that's part of the process. The future isn't built by silent agreement. It's built by engaged minds willing to show up. This is bigger than a comment section. It's a reminder that progress is a team effort and every voice adds fuel. Because love isn't just felt, it's shown one deliberate response at a time.